Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to add Facebook authentication to your Expo React Native app. We're going to start out by creating our Expo app using this Create Expo App CLI tool. We're going to call it Expo Facebook Login Tutorial. Then I'm going to change into that directory and I'm going to install the Expo Dev client. So the reason we need that Expo Dev client is we are going to build a standalone build, and that's because we will have a config plugin for connecting to Facebook login. So yeah, we need to build a standalone app so that the config plugin can be applied to like the info plist and Android manifest settings. When I done that, I configure the build, so I go ES build configure and I say I want both Android and iOS. I have a command code dot that will open Visual Studio. You can configure that inside Visual Studio itself. I'm not going to show that today, but my build configuration is here, and inside development I'm adding iOS simulated true because when I generate the build for the development profile, I want it to be installable on the simulator. For testing on an actual device, I'll use the preview profile, and I'll show you that a bit later too. I then run the EAS credentials command because I'm going to need some of the credentials to enable me to connect to my Android, so like configure a login for Android. But before I do that, I actually need to update the app.json with the Android package and also the iOS bundle identifier. So this is the Android package. I'm going to have the same for iOS, but it'll be called bundle identifier. Awesome, now I can go back and generate those credentials. I'm going to have to Control C out to run the command again to enable me to generate it. And then it goes ahead and gives me a few options. I just choose the defaults. And that gives me my build credentials, and that SHA-1 fingerprint is what I'm going to need to turn into a hex code over on Facebook website. I go to this website here that I'll link in the description and select the wanted Facebook login and enter things like the app name, just putting in Facebook login tutorial. Then I go ahead and create my app. It gives me this error that I can't use the keyword Facebook, so I went login tutorial instead. That'll just be to keep people from pretending to be Facebook and getting people to use their apps and trust their apps when they shouldn't. So preventing malicious behavior, basically. I'm going to want to go to this customize adding a Facebook login button once I've created my app. And there's a few different things you can do. You can add permissions if you want permissions to access different Facebook APIs. I'm just going to keep it as public profile. And then I'm going to go to quick start. This is where I can set up my iOS and Android apps. And you're wanting to skip most of the steps. Most of the steps are unnecessary because they relate to implementing it natively. I'm just going to go ahead and get my bundle identifier. So that's that same thing you put in the app.json before generating the credentials. And I'm just going to enable this. Everything else is actually handled for us by the config plugin, so we don't actually need to worry about anything else. So I'm over on Android now, and I need to enter the package name. And then once I've entered the package name, I can enter the default activity class name. This is actually just your package name with .main activity appended to it, and that's what it would be if you had the actual like Android that would be your entry point. Next up is an important step. It's adding your development and release hashes. So for your release build, you're going to have to also generate new hashes. But for now, I'm just going to show you development, and you can figure out the release from that. So I'm going to this website here that I'm going to link in the description, but basically it converts my SHA-1 fingerprint into the hex code that will allow me to use my Facebook login with Android. So just copy and paste that value. You can add multiple there, so if you had the release ones, you could add it there as well. And I'm just enabling single sign-on once again. So that's everything that I need to set up for iOS and Android. Now I'm going to go to my app settings. So you can see my app settings has an app ID, and that app ID is what I use to configure my Facebook login. You can also check that your iOS and Android has been set up, because they should show under the app settings. So now we're going across to our app again, and what we're going to do is we're going to install the necessary packages. So we're going to install the Facebook login package, and we're also going to install a tracking transparency package. That tracking transparency package is going to be useful to get whether the user's allowing us to track things for like ad serving preferences. So if I want personalized ads, I need to sort of check that to be in line with the iOS guidelines. So I'll just run that command there, and it'll go ahead and install. And what that actually is going to do is inside that app.json, it's going to add plugin sections, because both of those are config plugins, which basically means they use something native that and create like a bridge basically between the native and the JavaScript code. And it means you can update your like info plist and Android manifest without having to actually eject from Expo, so it's quite useful. So we've got this React Native Facebook SDK-Next that is our main package that we're going to use to interact with Facebook login, but it also requires some configuration settings. So it requires an app ID, it also requires a client token, and it requires a scheme, and also it requires a display name. I believe this is what is displayed when you go to login, but I could be wrong there. It could be coming from the app itself. The scheme is actually just FB and the app ID. So I actually don't know why they make you define it separately. I don't know why they don't programmatically figure that out on their own. It would save probably a few people misconfiguring things accidentally if they didn't realize what it was. So I'm going to copy this app ID across, and I'm going to put in app ID and also at the end of FB. Then I'm going to go ahead and get my client token. That's actually under advanced. So click through to advanced and I copy across this client token. The other settings are just like configuration settings around what's actually allowed, so whether you can track stuff and stuff like that. And you can adjust these settings after using the SDK. So yeah, I'll show you that in a second. I'm then going to go ahead and build my standalone app for iOS and Android. So the reason I'm doing this is because I have to test it as a standalone app, so I need to do this to be able to test it. But it's good to configure everything inside your app.json first so you don't need to rebuild. You can make changes inside the app.js after you have configured your built your app, standalone app, and they will be reflected inside your standalone app. So yeah, once you've got all the configuration done, it's a good time to build the app. And it can take a little while in the build queues. So like if it's queued and waiting, for example. So you can choose to build it locally, but I just haven't configured that on my computer at this stage. It's really convenient to just build it on Expo. But there is a limit. I don't tend to hit it though because I don't have a whole heap of free time. I maybe hit 1/3 of the limit. So I'm importing useEffect from React, and I'm doing that because I'm going to want to run this code once to when the app first loads to check whether I need to whether the user will allow me to track their ad preferences. So I'm just going to have this request tracking function. It's asynchronous. Which basically means it's going to have something long running inside it that I'm going to have to wait for the result for, which means I want to be able to give people who call the request tracking function the ability to await a result. So I've got the status, that's going to be whether the user has granted the permission or not. And then I'm going to request tracking permissions async. You can see that automatically added that import, so that's quite nice. And when I did settings, it also automatically added that import. I'm going to initialize the SDK for React Native Facebook. And then if the status is granted, then I'm going to change a setting. So I'm going to set that advertiser tracking enabled to true if the user allows it. That'll just mean that they get more targeted advertising. So now there is a login button component that Facebook supplies for you. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. I'm going to add the function that will be called when you log out. So once logout is finished, it's going to call this function. I'm just going to have it output that I've logged out to console. You would probably do something more useful if you're actually using this. Maybe do some clear up of what's sort of persisted in your state so that next time they log in, it's sort of consistent with them being logged out. Then I'm going to have a onLogin function that's going to be called when the user finishes logging in. Or cancels logging in. So it's going to either log that error or the data that comes back from the login. And you can actually get the access token separately if you want to. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. You wouldn't typically necessarily do it here, but and you don't actually need to get it if you just want to call the Facebook APIs, but you might want it. So if you want it, this is how you get it. I'm just console logging it because I just want to show you how to get it, not so much how to use it. Because you don't need to use it if you're just calling Facebook APIs, because there is a inbuilt way of connecting to those graph APIs. Now I'm going to head on over to just check the progress of my build, because I feel like it'd be a nice time to show you what's going on. You can see that it's still building. If you want, you can check the different steps to make sure everything's going well. I just paused and now I'm downloading it. So I'm going to drag my iOS simulator onto screen, and I've downloaded the file, which I'll then drag across onto the iOS simulator. There'll be some instructions on how to do things like installing the standalone app, but once you've installed it, you're going to run expo start --dev client. That's going to mean that it opens inside your standalone app instead of Expo Go, which wouldn't work in this case because we can't test Facebook login inside Expo Go due to the config plugins. So I'm going to go ahead and click open when it prompts me, and it's going to go ahead and open my standalone app, and I'm going to allow it to deliver personalized ads to me, and I'm going to click login on this Facebook button. Going to open this website, and because it's like a it's not in review yet, it gives me the option to submit for review, but I just click through to log in. It gives me back the access token and also my granted permissions and whether it was cancelled, which was false because I did choose to log in fully. Now that I've got that, I'm going to go ahead and add another function that's going to allow me to get data from the graph APIs. So I'm just going to show you how to do that. So I'm going to create a new button called Get Data, and on press I'm going to call this function Get Data. So the graph APIs that you have access to will be dependent on what permissions you have, and some permissions will require that you actually go and get your app reviewed. I'm not sure if you can use it in dev without getting it reviewed, so yeah, that's something that you would need to look into. But I'm using one that doesn't require any review because it's just basic data. So first off, you're going to build a request using this graph request, and you just pass in the path. That's the path of the API, and you can pass in any config that you want and a callback that's going to get called when the result or error comes back. So if you called something that was you didn't have access to, it would give you an error saying like unauthorized access or something like that. But I'm going to have access to this because it's the most basic endpoint. Or if I called an endpoint that didn't exist, it would also give me an error. So once I've got my request, I can use this graph request manager to add the request and then sort of start the request. So when I click on that Get Data button, it's going to build my request and then start that request and return back that data by console logging it. You would obviously probably want to do something more useful with that data, but yeah, let's click Get Data and you can see it returns my name and my ID. I'm going to add another button now, which is the share link. So you can use the share dialog to share certain data, so it can be links or pictures, or I think pretty much most sort of things that you could share to Facebook is the sort of things you can share. This is my share link function that I'm going to call, because I'm going to share a link in this case, because it's quite easy to build up a share for a link. So first off, I've got this variable that's going to hold my content object, and I'm going to have a content type, which is link. If it was photo, it'd be something like photo. You can see the exact details on the Facebook documentation, which I'll link. And then you're going to have a content URL. I'm just going to put my YouTube page. Then you can check whether you can show using this share dialog .can show, and you specify the share content, and it just checks whether you can show it. Because I'm awaiting something, I need to make this share link function async. So if I can show, I'm going to do stuff. Basically, I'm going to try to share it, and if there's an error, I'll console log the error. So when I go to share, there's going to be some values I can get back. So one of them would be is cancelled, so whether I cancelled my share, and one would be the post ID if I actually did follow through with posting it. So I'm going to await that share dialog.show, which is going to pop up a share dialog logged into your Facebook, and try to share, and it'll be trying to share that content that you've specified. If it's cancelled, I'm just going to say that it's cancelled, which is what I'm going to do because I don't actually want to share to my Facebook. And otherwise, it's going to just log out the post ID basically. And I can catch any errors and just log those as well. Cool. So you can see that share link's now showing up, and if I click it, it opens Facebook in the browser, which I'd need to log into again. I can't actually install Facebook on the simulator, which would show you a more seamless experience. So I'm going to go ahead and show you a little bit later how to install it on your standalone app on an actual physical device, so that you can install like apps that you might be interacting with, like Facebook, for example, in this case. So yeah, this is me generating the build for the profile internal. That's going to enable me to, it's actually preview. That's going to enable me to get an app that I can install on my physical device. It's going to get you to specify your registered devices that you want to be able to install the app on. I've got mine already linked to my Apple ID, so I can just select that I want to use those same ones. It just gives you a few things to verify, and yeah, this is where it allows me to select what devices I want to be able to install my app on. Creates the new profile that's required, specifies whether you want to set up push notifications. I actually didn't, so I cancelled out to start again. So yes, I accidentally enabled push notifications last time, so I just skipped back to this point to show you what the rest of the steps are. It basically just generates a new link, and now my Android build is now ready for me to go ahead and show you that. I do find that with Android emulator I have some issues when I am not on like a fresh restart for some reason. So if you are having issues, just completely restart your device, not even just your emulator, like your full computer, and then it typically allows me to do login. I don't know why it sort of is a bit sort of flaky, but this is how it typically works for me. So we've got it on the Android, and it's going to go ahead and we're going to show you logging in. My Android device is also incredibly slow always, which is a bit painful. I need to get a physical device, and yeah, that plan is for next year, but for now I just use the emulator. So that was me showing you it not working before I restarted. This time it's going to go ahead and work a little bit more seamlessly. If you've watched any of my Google authentication videos, you would have seen that this was also a problem for Google. It just seems to be some sort of issue with maybe the state the emulator gets into, and I don't know if it's specific to my emulator, but yeah, if anyone's experienced that issue, you're not alone. So yeah, I can click this get data link and it will get data as well. I'm not going to bother clicking that share link, it would just open the browser, which would require login because I don't have Facebook installed on the emulator. So now I'm showing you on a physical device. This is my preview build, and it's got a QR code that you scan on your physical device. Click on open iTunes install, and then you can go ahead and open the app. I've said that I want to log in. It gives me the option to open in Facebook, so it opens in Facebook app itself. Then I can continue as Chelsea, and it's logged me in. Then I can go and click that share link, and you can see that YouTube link is there. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial today. If you have, please like and subscribe for more content, or my code will be available on GitHub.